Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the content patch for the 6th of May 2015. My name is TotalBiscuit with today's gaming news and comments. Coming up in the show, Google Play removes threes from the store over a terms of service violation. The latest Mortal Kombat 10 patch on PC wipes your save games. And users report bans for the use of field of view mods in GTA multiplayer. All this in the AeroZ Remix track of the day is coming your way right about now. Puzzle Game Threes has been removed from the Google Play Store due to a violation of Google's terms of service, specifically due to the use of the word 2048 in their search keywords. This is according to the developer Asher Vollmer, who went on to make a statement to Game Informer, claiming that the decision to pull our app was clearly made by a robot and not by an actual human. I want Google Play to at least issue warnings before they take these kind of actions. Hundreds of people will now be directed to our clones for the next few days instead of the actual game. This was a completely tone-deaf move. As of a few hours ago, the game was restored to Google Play. That said, there hasn't been an official comment or statement by Google as of yet as to why exactly this issue occurred. Now, my take on this is that the story of threes is, quite frankly, tragic. I mean, it really is. I've been a big supporter of threes for a very long time. It ended up in my best mobile games of 2014 arbitrary awards nominations, because it is that good. It's a very well-designed puzzle game that is aesthetically pleasing and is obviously built with a ton of love and a lot of forethought. I read some very interesting articles about the development of this game, and the sheer amount of thought that actually went into creating it is massive. It's a very clever game, it's a very subtle game, it's a very elegant game, and it also has far more personality than any puzzle game really has any right to, with each tile taking on its own little face and particular piece of voice acting. It's a wonderful little game, and I would recommend it to pretty much anybody. Now, what happened with Threes is that it was eclipsed by its clone 2048, which originally began as an open source game. It was available on multiple platforms, including web browsers on PC, and it also became available on the Google Play Store before Threes did. Now, in combination with the fact that 2048 is a much more simplistic game than Threes and requires much less thought to actually play and get high scores with, I believe that resulted in the popularity of 2048 eclipsing Threes. It should also, of course, be noted that it's a free game, whereas Threes had the audacity to try and charge a very small amount of money. And as we're well aware, that generally doesn't go all that well on mobile devices. Since then, 2048 has been cloned into oblivion, including games with ads and games that actually cost money. So the clone spawned a bunch more clones, and in doing so, it actually caused Threes to be buried under a set of games which, in my personal opinion, are inferior copies. It's just such a shame to see that kind of thing happen. Cloning is a big problem on the iOS store as well as Google Play. Google Play in particular is rampant with it. We've seen some attempts to crack down with the App Store, but Google Play is the Wild West when it comes to cloning, and so much of it ends up happening, and it's a huge problem on mobile devices. That said, Threes didn't necessarily do themselves any favors. It took them a while to port over to Android in the first place, which allowed clones to take control of the market. Bear in mind, it came out first on iOS and it was quite popular. It was promoted heavily by the Apple curation system as an editor's choice game, so it became relatively successful. However, the Android version has been known to drain battery quite heavily, as well as have various performance issues, whereas 2048 is a very lightweight app and doesn't necessarily have that problem. It also made the critical mistake of actually asking for money for its work rather than loading it as a free-to-play game with a bunch of bullshit microtransactions. It's such a weird thing to see as a PC gamer that people would prefer to have a free game that's just loaded with restrictions as opposed to actually paying $2 for a really piece of high-quality work. It's really depressing. It really is, and it's one of the reasons why the Google Play Store in particular is something of a wasteland for high-quality products. So I'm not going to necessarily say that there was a huge injustice done when it comes to Threes being eclipsed by 2048 on Android platforms, because there's a number of logical reasons as to why that was. Now, what about them using the keyword? Well, Some people are very upset about them using this keyword. Personally, I have no problem with it. Search keywords are useful to make yourself appear on a list with things that are very similar. And 2048 is extremely similar to Threes. I mean, 2048 is a clone. It's as simple as that. It was admitted to be a clone. The person that made it said, yep, this game is heavily inspired by Threes. And it's a very, very similar concept. The only difference is that Threes is a lot more complex because of the combination of the 1 and 2 cards to make a 3, and then the multiples of 3 being much more difficult to properly execute with a high score than 2048 is, which is multiples of 2. I mean, you could literally get a high score in that game by just slashing left over and over and over again. It should also be noted that in 2048 you move the entire row, whereas in Threes you move an individual card. And some people will say that it's marketing under false pretenses. I think in this particular instance, it is entirely fair for Threes to use 2048. That game cloned them, pure and simple, and it ended up being vastly more popular as a direct result of being free, being easier, and being available on Android before they were. As far as I'm concerned, this is fair game, and I don't think it's misleading at all. It's a very, very similar game. I personally, if I was marketing a game on the App Store, would also put in the names of very similar games. Indeed, I would make the argument that that's a service to the consumer, because someone searching for 2048 may also be interested in other games which are similar to 2048, such as Threes, which was the original and, in my opinion, the best. It really is a story of a master-crafted game getting beaten into the ground by an inferior free clone. That's the way that I personally view it. And ripping the app from the store for something as minor as a search keyword, I'm not keen on that at all. I'm glad that they got restored so quickly, but this continues to bring up a discussion as to how these stores are actually curated and whether or not Google and Apple should be doing anything against the rampant cloning. Also, of course, the discussion of whether or not this is iteration or whether or not it's blatant cloning and where the line is actually drawn. Because some people are going to make the argument that if people hadn't cloned Doom, then we wouldn't have an FPS genre. Yeah, I can see the point, but a lot of Doom clones, especially the good ones, brought many new mechanics and, of course, different themes into the mix. 2048 really doesn't. 2048 is a reductive version of Threes. It doesn't bring new mechanics, it actually takes mechanics away. It makes the game simpler, and that game would not exist were it not for Threes. I think that it crosses the line between iteration and cloning, simply because it doesn't iterate on the concept, it takes away from it. It takes steps back rather than forward. Had it tried to genuinely add to the game rather than take away from it, then I can see the iteration argument making sense. It's like, say, comparing Doom to Cybermage Darklight Awakening, which came out 2 years after. It's like, well, it's a Doom clone. Well, no, it really isn't. It adds so much. It's set in a completely different place. It adds a bunch of new mechanics, vehicles, all sorts of crazy stuff like that. That's true iteration. That's what creates a genre. 2048 is not iteration. Cloning is always going to be contentious because, as we're well aware, game mechanics can't be trademarked, they can't be copyrighted in such a way that you can stop other people from using them, and in fact, it's a bad idea to do so because game mechanics can be iterated upon in order to create a genre and also make better games. We shouldn't be in a situation where game mechanics are held hostage. That would be a very, very bad idea, as far as I'm concerned. I think the only equitable solution, really, is to allow Threes to continue to use the 2048 keyword. It makes sense. It's obvious that Threes was the heavy inspiration, and I use that term loosely, for 2048, and it's good for the consumer to be offered a wide variety of 2048-like games. If they end up finding that easier as a result of the search term, then as far as I'm concerned, that's a net positive for the consumer, and it's not in any way trying to mislead the consumer through false search terms. On the 5th of May, High Voltage, the company responsible for porting Mortal Kombat 10 to PC, released a 15GB patch which they claimed would solve many of the woes of PC gamers since the release of the title. Unfortunately, it actually resulted in large numbers of players having their save games completely wiped. High Voltage posted 2 short updates on the Steam community saying that they were temporarily removing the patch until they can pinpoint the cause of save data loss. We're actively working on it, they said, and we'll keep everyone posted as we work towards a fix. We sincerely apologize for this disruption. The second post was even shorter, claiming that they were continuing to work on the fix for save data loss, and in order to ensure it's properly tested, we will look to post the fix early tomorrow morning. Now, as of the recording of this video, that fix has been posted with yet another monolithic 15GB patch, which has actually caused some users to have to download up to 60GB worth of patches in total for this game, which I think has got to be some kind of record. It's unrealistically ridiculous. The patch was supposed to fix a laundry list of problems, including a critical memory leak bug, as well as issues with controls, performance issues on certain setups, and problems with the online play. There were also issues with the new character Jason not being available to PC gamers that had purchased the Combat Pack Season Pass, which was also supposed to be fixed within this patch. All we now seem to have, however, are a bunch of very, very angry PC gamers having lost their save files, meaning that all of their unlocks from the crypt have disappeared, as well as, of course, their story mode progression, tower progression, and all manner of other things. Oh my, oh my. High Voltage is not exactly well known for its great ports, and this is by no means the exception to the rule. They were responsible for the port of Injustice to PC, which was not that great. They were responsible for Mortal Kombat Complete Edition on PC, which again was not that great either. It does seem that those that want to buy Mortal Kombat on PC are continuously getting screwed over by a company that is not doing their job properly. The launch of Mortal Kombat 10, as you're probably well aware if you're watching my channel, was an absolute disaster, with most players running into issues with tons of missing content due to a botched streaming launch system that had never been tested before and evidently did not work. This was eventually fixed, but various woes, including said memory leak, performance issues, and online play, continued. At the time of recording, bearing in mind that this patch was only just re-released, it's hard to know whether or not it actually ended up fixing all of the problems. As it stands, because so many people are downloading the game, there are almost no opponents available in the online mode to actually test the netcode. So that's a laugh. Whatever the case, the wiping of the save files was absolutely ridiculous. Thankfully, those that did not load the patch seem to be safe, although anyone that attempted to patch yesterday will have lost all of their save data, and currently there does not appear to be a resolution for that whatsoever. I'm going to be frank, I think the only way that they can deal with this properly is to provide compensation, and that would, I think, take the form of a great deal of combat coins in order to re-unlock everything that's within the crypt, and a few free skins would probably not go amiss either to try and placate the angry masses. I wouldn't blame them. I mean, this is ridiculous behavior, frankly, from High Voltage. It's absolutely terrible. The game has not been in a great state since release, and this diabolical mess-up with the patch is merely insult to injury. Those wondering whether or not to pick up Mortal Kombat 10, I would still recommend holding off on this thing, because Lord knows what will happen in the next chapter of the saga of High Voltage's port. It is quite the thing. And finally, a rash of reports have sprung up over the last couple of days from gamers claiming to have been banned temporarily, or in some cases permanently, from GTA Online for using various mods. This includes a confirmed case of a player getting banned from GTA Online for using an FOV mod. This was stated very specifically in the support email from Rockstar themselves, who claimed that they had examined the account and determined it had been flagged by the cheater system for FOV modification. The email continues to claim that repeated events may result in permanent placement in the cheater pool, which is, of course, a matchmaking pool of players that have been deemed as cheaters and are all sort of forced to play together, and the possibility of full loss of online access for Grand Theft Auto. There have also been reports, which are as of yet unconfirmed, that players have actually been banned from GTA Online for using field of view modifications and single-player trainers in order to cheat within the single-player campaign. As of yet, however, there has been no official statement from Rockstar in regards to this issue, and there has not been any proof presented that this has occurred. The only thing we've heard is, of course, a bunch of rumors, so we should treat them as such. Now, while the port for Grand Theft Auto for PC is actually quite good, the support of Rockstar since its release has been woefully underwhelming. There was a report last month by Gamers Nexus in which a reporter repeatedly called the customer support line in order to try and get his hacked Rockstar Social Club account resolved. He was repeatedly hung up on by customer support staff before Rockstar eventually admitted that higher-ups had told their customer support staff to hang up on customers for that specific issue. On the 22nd of April, Rockstar claimed that the social club had not been compromised, regardless of the fact that there were a rash of compromised social club accounts, which were preventing players from logging into the game, since Social Club effectively provides a second form of DRM on top of the Steamworks DRM, which is already implemented. Rockstar insisted they were working to revert the accounts back to their original owners. Not exactly a good few weeks for Rockstar when it comes to customer support and treating its customers like reasonable people as opposed to criminals. It would be nice to see Rockstar comment on the modding situation. Their EULA in terms of service was actually updated in 2013 to indicate that modifying the game was against the terms of service. Some people have reported that this was a recent change, but that does not appear to actually be the case. What this indicates to me is a service problem. It's quite similar to the way that Gabe Newell described piracy. The reason why there is piracy is because the current services simply aren't good enough to convince people to buy legally. And if you're able to do that, then you can stop some, not all, but some people from actually engaging in piracy. This is a pretty similar situation. The reason why people are using FOV mods is because the in-game field of view is not sufficient. It's not good enough. It's one of the things that I made a comment on in my port report video. The field of view only seems to go up to about 80, which is really not that acceptable, and the gun models are also absolutely bloody massive. So these are the sort of things that you would imagine quite a few people would want to modify, because many of us suffer from simulation sickness, which makes the game more unpleasant to play in first-person mode. You can understand why people would want to increase that field of view as a direct result. So instead of banning people for using that, which admittedly does give people a small competitive advantage in GTA multiplayer, it would seem to me that the most sensible thing to do would be to patch the game to increase the in-game field of view options. These mods exist because the game doesn't do a good enough job in providing the options that people need. That should be taken as valuable customer feedback, as opposed to an excuse to ban people from the service and create more pirates, because that's exactly what you are doing when you ban people for using modifications that are merely designed to make their experience better. This is also the case with single-player trainers, although I can understand why some trainers would trigger their automated cheat system since they use DLL injection methods, which are also used for cheating within the online multiplayer. That said, cheating in single-player, as far as I'm concerned, should be the decision of the consumer, and anyone that is banned for that, assuming that that is actually happening and it isn't just a rumor, should get their accounts reinstated. Alright folks, that's me done for the day. Thank you very much for watching the content patch, but before I go, let's move on to the next track from the wonderful album, 7 Songs for 7th Saga. The 5th track of 7 is what we're moving on to right now. There's a wonderful cello interpretation that goes by the name of Moon. You can download the whole thing in the description below this video for free, and I'll see you next time.